The cause of many of these issues is our dependency on the extraction, production, and ultimate disposal of so many materials and products push our planetary boundaries beyond their limits. In fact, over the span of the last 6 years, we have extracted and used almost as many materials as in the entire 20th century. The message is clear. We need to do things differently. We need to make that switch now. And we now know that solving this problem is as much about addressing economic principles as it is environmental ones. So it's fitting then that I'm saying this from the stunning backdrop of Panmure House in Edinburgh, home of Adam Smith, pioneering philosopher, and who many consider to be the father of modern economics. Smith, along with his Scottish Enlightenment contemporaries, used Panmure House to meet, debate, and discuss what they saw as the global challenges of their time. In his 1776 classic book, The Wealth of Nations, Smith had a lot to say about consumption and production and the tensions between them, much of which underpins today's economic theory. But it's clear that the challenges around consumption are very different now compared to 250 years ago. In 2024, they're off the scale, driven in part by a linear system of take, make, and waste, leading to unrestrained consumption and overproduction, resulting in a crippling strain on the planet. To break free from the shackles of these existing systems and processes, we need to rebalance this linear economic system in favour of a more circular approach to how we use and value our resources. We need to make it not only easier, but more desirable to embed circular practices to business models and everyday life. To do so, we need to rewire the economy so it's fit for the future that we all want, one that is fair, equitable, prosperous for all, and environmentally sustainable. For Zero Waste Scotland, this means we will focus on 4 key areas. 1, helping people care, raising awareness so more people understand the impact of their consumption and how they can adopt more circular practices. 2, making circularity easier, creating the right conditions for circularity, not just to take root, but to grow and expand and become the norm. 3, doing more where it matters most, working in high-impact sectors where we know there is clear economic and environmental benefits to be had, such as working in net zero infrastructure and the built environment, as well as working at the place-based level with our cities and regions, where bespoke local actions can have real, tangible benefits to individual citizens and communities. And lastly, 4, improving infrastructure to allow greater access to the circular behaviours we need. Whether that is reuse, repair or recycling, we need to generate greater flow of resources, products and materials around our economy. Now is the time when we need to be disruptive, focused and unapologetic in our ambition. We have the ideas, the expertise, and with our newfound status, the authority to make the difference. This corporate plan is our dynamic blueprint for how we're going to do this. It's our bold strategic vision for Scotland's economy. It will detail the steps Zero Waste Scotland will take to mobilise this vital transformation. Through collective action, we can harness the power of economic change to create a world where prosperity thrives within planetary boundaries. Like Smith, who was inspired by geographers, chemists and politicians and others, and saw it as vital to work together to solve problems, we know we need to reach out and build on our existing partnerships, as well as build new ones to encompass all parts of the economy. Like him, we are responding to a global economic challenge at scale. Like him, we need to be steadfast in our leadership of an economy rewired for the future. We know it's no easy feat, but it's a challenge we can and must win together.
I should just sit down now, shouldn't I? That's it. And thank you, Geraldine, and the team at CIRCULÉIRE for the kind invite to come along today and talk a little bit more about what you've just heard, but also just tell a little bit more of the story about Zero Waste Scotland. And I was going to start, it's a bit of a ring, so just loud. You don't want to watch it again. So anyway, I'm just going to start with a picture of my dad, actually. Because one of the things when we get asked about that video is rewiring, is that, you know, why did you kind of go for that phrase, rewiring the economy? And part of it comes from the lesson I learned from my dad, who was an electrician, who could fix anything. In fact, my house was the original repair shop. Neighbours used to drop things off at the back door, kettles, toasters, etc. My dad would fix them. But one of the jobs he did, which I remember when I was very young, was he went and rewired my grandparents' old house in the country. And the reason he rewired that house was, back in the 70s, it was trying to ensure that the house was fit for the future, with all the new gadgets and all the new plugs. That the house, they did have electricity. It wasn't that they didn't have electricity. They could watch television and they could do various things and cook, but the house wasn't fit for the future. So his job was to rewire that, but also really important as well, to make that house safe. So I guess when we look at some of what's happening already in the world, the idea of rewiring the economy is not just fit for the future that we all want in terms of fair and equitable and sustainable. It's making sure that it doesn't get any more dangerous than it is now, and we can clearly see that from the big weather events and the geopolitics that are going on, which are all to a great extent being caused by climate change, amongst other things. So anyway, a little bit before I just talk about our journey that we're on, I'm going to keep pressing the wrong button every time, is who Zero Waste Scotland are. So hopefully people are aware that we are Scotland's new public body for the circular economy. We've been around for 10 years. We've been doing various things. I won't get into all of the detail of that. We actually do have something on our website, a decade of delivery. I will just show it there. If you want to go and download it, it talks about all of the work that we've been involved in over the piece. We basically do two things. We provide policy support to the Scottish Government, so we have a considerable research capability on evidence and insights, so we provide a lot of the background to Scottish Government policy making, but we also deliver programs to support both local authorities, municipalities, businesses in the main, as well as citizens, individual citizens and communities. We're an organisation of about 160, 170 people, and we have an annual budget of around 40 million euros. Half of that's around about investment into infrastructure, and the other half is, paying for staff and running some of the programs. So we're very much focused on the delivery. So one of the things that we were involved in was a first ever circular economy strategy for Scotland, one of the first ever circular economy strategies across Europe in 2016, which set out the ambitions around the circular economy and created a bit of a programme which we led to deliver various investments in business support, as well as very similar to what you have here, creating a network of businesses that were interested in the circular economy. There's also the Institute for Remanufacturing, which very similar to what you have here in terms of focusing specifically on remanufacturing businesses and opportunities, and as well as reuse and repair, so working probably specifically with the third sector, the social enterprise sector, who were already in the space in terms of reuse and repair. How could we bring an accreditation and a profile to them so they could upscale, diversify, and provide the kind of accessibility for reuse and repair at a local level? And that now is expanded to a kind of share and repair network across Scotland. Also procurement training, as well as a cities and region schemes. And I might talk about that a little bit more. Our history as Zero Waste Scotland was very much working in sectors, working with key industries, whether that was the whisky industry, whether it was food and drink, or the built environment. But we started to really understand how the circular economy could work at a local level, particularly working with partners like Glasgow Chamber of Commerce, Edinburgh Chamber of Commerce. We're now working with Highlands and Islands Enterprise and the South of Scotland Enterprise agencies to really understand what the local opportunities are to create much more circular practices, which I do believe has had probably the greatest traction in the work that we've done over the years. And this is just to show you quickly research capability. So we've done circular gap analysis, very similar to what highlighted in the last presentation. We've looked at material flow accounts, but we've now used that analysis to drill down into key sectors. So this is just one of my favourite slides. It's really to try and show on your right is the materials that are going to be available as we decommission the North Sea infrastructure, oil and gas, a lot of that infrastructure coming from the North Sea has been, could be made available into the wider economy. And what we have on the right is what the materials that we actually need for the net zero infrastructure in terms of offshore wind and onshore wind. Now, it's not an exact match, but you can start to see, you can start to understand the opportunities. So we could start to harness the materials that are going to be made available. We could certainly reduce the consumption of virgin materials at scale as we deploy what is a necessary infrastructure going into the future. That's one of the other things that we do. We provide behavioural change campaigns for citizens. So this is just highlighting the impact of textiles. So we do a variety of them across Scotland. But it is working with businesses, which I think has more relevance today. And we've been working directly, as I said, investing in businesses, supporting individual businesses. A lot of those businesses, whether it's working with hemp, taking coffee grains and recycling them back into substitutes for palm oil. There's alcoholic spirits being made from bread and from potatoes. There's remanufacturing opportunities. There's work with algae. All of those types of businesses, I'm sure, are prevalent in Ireland as well. Those types of businesses, innovative businesses, who are leading the way in terms of demonstrating the art of the possible. But it's those businesses that have really educated us as an organisation to really understand what do we need to do to see more of those businesses, but more importantly, see these businesses scale and become more successful. And that has been one of the challenges. Although we've been working with these businesses for some time, we're not seeing the level of scalability that we really thought we would see. It does, as I said, it shows the art of the possible. These businesses are being successful, but they're being successful to some extent within a niche. So we've analysed that and obviously done some lesson learned reports to really get under the bonnet, as Geraldine said, to really understand not so much what's going wrong, but what are the barriers and where are the opportunities to make it much more smooth for those businesses to not just thrive, but to become normal. And we've taken an ecosystems approach, working with Stirling University, really to start to think about this in a different way, rather than just thinking about individual barriers to individual companies. And that has really led us to thinking about the different elements of that ecosystem. So I would obviously highlight the report in a lot more detail. It gets into those 11 elements that are barriers to some extent, but it's not just one thing that will solve them. You need to start thinking about the whole of the ecosystem and creating a different dynamic for those businesses to thrive. And actually, somebody else pointed out earlier, the ecosystem that we all operate within is very much tilted towards the linear economy. It's been there for, well, centuries to some extent, and it's got very good at supporting business. We need to actually not just level the playing field, but we need to tilt that ecosystem to favour much more circular practices. So that's the heart of our corporate plan, as you've seen from the video. It's not so much working with individual businesses on a one-to-one basis. How do we actually create the right conditions for those businesses and other businesses to thrive? What are the things that are going to make this actually happen at scale? And that's going to be the focus, thinking about the economic opportunity to change the ecosystem for the better. Ultimately, there's a number of things in the plan. Again, you go to the website and you'll get a little bit more of the detail of it. But it is about how do we build, as I say, I mean, if you go back to one of the previous slides, our program was, we used to talk about this as a moonshot, our circular economy ambitions for Scotland. And some of the questions I got asked was, how far are we towards the moon, Iain? How far is the circular economy actually making a difference? The real purpose now, I think, for Zero Waste Scotland is not so much, it's still a moonshot, but actually we've realised we're not going to get there in the rocket that we had. We actually need to build a new rocket. That's what the whole system change is about. How do we create a new ecosystem for the circular economy to, as I said, to thrive and expand? So some of the raising awareness, I think, is key to this, and education, because this is the thing we don't really talk about. We talk about climate change, we talk about the impact of that and emissions and stuff like that, but we very rarely talk. I mean, obviously in this room we're all talking about the circular economy and the importance of resources, but it's not something that we really go out and talk about when we're getting people interested in taking climate or taking action against climate change. But we do need to talk about it. We need to raise awareness. If we're ever going to pull in the resources and the people to really make the difference, we need to be much more upfront and engaging in the real impact of our consumption, both in terms of our individual consumption, our business consumption, and our wider economic consumption. We do need this to be one of the topics, and we shouldn't be afraid to talk about it much more openly. And that's critical if we're going to have this innovation culture, which I think is at their heart, just as other presenters will talk about, is at the heart of the circular economy journey, creating that innovation culture. And to get there, I mean, there's people we're familiar with the innovation funnel. And as an organisation that supported innovation, we're very aware of that. But to be all intents and purposes, particular public agencies, we tend to work along to the left. When businesses have had an idea, they might have tested it to some degree, and we see it much easier to work with those businesses to help them scale. But if we're really serious about the circular economy, we need to go to the right, to the right of that funnel, and really create much more creativity and entrepreneurship in this space. And that starts at schools, it starts at tertiary education, it starts in the community, getting people to really think about it. Again, raising awareness will create, you know, a new range of ideas that we can then harness and turn into business opportunities. So we really need to create that culture if we're really serious about creating a different type of innovation environment for everybody. The third thing I was just going to stress is the need to really think about it, not from a national point of view, but at cities and regions, at a local level as well. I think there's been a bit of a shift in Scotland around that. I think it was always seen that the circular economy was being driven from the centre. It was a national strategy. It was something the national government could do in terms of regulation and legislation and even investment. But we're now seeing a much more empowered regional and certainly local government in Scotland thinking about circular economy, not so much about something to do with their waste and recycling services, as much as they are very important to that, but much more as an economic model, an economic opportunity, both at a local level, even working together with neighbouring local authorities to create regional opportunities, but also thinking about that social angle. How can these opportunities create real social dividend in their communities that they really represent? And I definitely think that's the future. I always say, you know, rewiring the economy or changing the economy, whatever you want to say, is a big thing. And people say, oh my God, Iain, that's a massive thing. And just like the phrase about how do you eat an elephant, you do it one bite at a time. And one bite at a time is working at that local level and finding the way to actually create much more circular opportunities at that level, and then building a much bigger picture in terms of the wider economy. So we don't have Europe to some extent, although obviously our eyes are on Europe and the progress that's been made in Europe around the circular economy and the policy dynamic which is driving a lot of other countries. You know, I'm sure Ireland's part of that, and the partners that we work with. So obviously from the Scottish Government's point of view, very keen to follow that example. But in Scotland we now have a Circular Economy Act which was passed in Parliament just this summer, which really sets out more of the ambition, more of the kind of areas that the Scottish Government really want to take forward across the country to make sure that the circular economy, as I said, is built in and becomes a much more normal way for everyone to operate. Now, without getting to the details of it, and to some extent, you know, I always say the idea of having a legislative strategy and targets will come, and they will underpin the progress. But what's most significant is probably the diagram on the left, is our Circular Economy Act was passed unanimously in the Scottish Parliament. And I've worked across government for a number of years. You don't get many bills or acts that are passed unanimously by all the parties. And the circular economy was that. Now, there was obviously debate in the Parliament about the circular economy, but it was more about the level of ambition rather than people were deep-rooted against it or didn't think it would be something that they could support. Everybody supports the circular economy, whether it's to do with tackling climate change, whether it's to do with innovative culture, supporting entrepreneurs, investment, or it's about building a much more resilient economy, on a fairer and more sustainable economy. Everybody supports the circular economy. And that's the wind in all our sails. This might be about how do we deliver it, how do we support the businesses, all of the minutiae that we all are deeply involved in terms of the ecosystem that we're all part of. But ultimately, we have wind in our sails. The circular economy is gaining traction, not just here in Ireland, not just in Scotland, but across the world. This is the trend that everybody is getting excited about. So I'm really pleased to be able to come and share our story have a bit of a chat, I hope, and answer any questions, but on obviously the networking as well. Thank you.